Xavi's Barcelona has a very good record against Carlo Ancelotti's Real Madrid. They've won 5 out of 7 meetings, and their most recent 2-1 victory put them 12 points clear at the top of La Liga, making them firm title favourites. So on the back of that, I wanted to explain all the tactical reasons that Barca won this title decider, but also more generally, why they're the better football team right now. So if you enjoy this video, consider leaving a like, and we're going to get straight into the tactics. So I'm going to start with Real Madrid in their build-up, and as I'm sure you know, Real Madrid are a very patient possession side. In fact, according to markstats, they're actually the least direct team in La Liga based on their passing, which is a philosophy they carry unwaveringly into these Clásicos, which does feel a little bit naive at times, because as most of you will also know, Barcelona are set up to prevent build-up at all costs. The last couple of Clásicos, they were a bit more conservative, but here at home, they were back to their aggressive selves. That means that from any static scenario, so goal kicks, it's really difficult to play out of this man-to-man press, because there just aren't any safe passing options. The only player here that isn't marked is the left centre-back, but the centre-forward is preventing any access to him. Balde, the left-back, is stepping up to press the right-back Carvajal, so it's really hard to find a way out of this in a controlled manner. Madrid, though, insist on doing that anyway. That's been costly in previous Clásicos, and it nearly was here in this one. Which is why most teams faced with this press try and find a more direct route out, including Barcelona themselves, who use ter Stegen's incredible passing range to find a fullback, or if the fullback's marked, they have Lewandowski, who is a pretty excellent hold-up player. Real Madrid, on the other hand, don't really have those options. Their only real outlet is Benzema, and he was pretty well pocketed by Jules Koundé, at least in this game. If you can't win this centre-forward versus centre-back duel, it's really hard to play out from the press, and Real Madrid continue to have that problem in these games. Those are, however, the static scenarios. In more open play, Madrid do much better at retaining possession against Xavi's Barça. They make the pitch very wide, usually by dropping a midfielder into the back line. They create big gaps between their own midfielders to isolate the Barca players as they try to press. Valverde typically drifts inside, which forces Xavi or whoever is there back, and then they can play very comfortably from left to right, evading Barca's pressure. If you watched my first Clasico analysis this season, you'll know I'm very much repeating myself, because Madrid did the exact same thing. And you'll also know what comes next, which is that while this possession is very useful for control and game management, it also carries very little threat. And this is the crux of the issue with Real Madrid in this game, and most games against Barca this season, is that they find it very difficult turning controlled possession into sustained threat. So I'm going to show you an example. Here they find a ball over the top into Militao running in behind. Yes, Militao, that is Ancelotti for you. But the point is, he recycles the ball into Benzema, and Madrid have a chance to sustain some pressure here in the final third. Benzema goes back to Kroos, and you can see already here that Madrid aren't in much of a hurry to get players in support of the ball. So when eventually it goes out to Vinicius, you can see he's basically in a 2 versus 5 situation. There's very little support around him. Nobody has come across into the left half space, which means if Madrid want to score from here, Vinicius just has to do something special. And to be fair, he almost does. The problem is, this isn't a one-off scenario, but a common theme. Time and again, the man on the ball for Real Madrid, and it's usually Vinicius, is isolated and outnumbered and has to produce something against the odds. This is another example of Madrid in settled possession. You can see the only real options are behind the ball, the attacking players are all very isolated, and I could make a whole video on Ancelotti's philosophy and why this happens, but the short story is that players are prioritizing control over chance creation, and the result is very little threat. Strangely though, this problem continues even during Real Madrid's counterattacks, which you would really expect to be a source of bigger danger. So here there's a turnover and Kroos is played into space, but for whatever reason, there's very little desire for any Madrid player to burst forward and take advantage of the space behind Barca's back line. It ends up at Vinicius again, who checks back this time, and again is heavily outnumbered. All 3 Real Madrid midfielders are well behind the ball, and the attack breaks down as Benzema and Vinicius try to play a 1-2. Now, despite Madrid's reluctance to break ahead of the ball, you of course have to give Barcelona a lot of credit here. The speed that they get numbers back has become a real feature of Xavi's team, and it's really important in defending transitions. But there's something else more subtle that they're doing, which is even more impressive. I'm going to try and explain that. So here it's Madrid breaking forward. I believe Nacho has beaten Raphinha in a 1v1 and is running at the defence. Again, Barca recover pretty well, they get numbers back, but it breaks to Modric outside the box. You can see here how deep Barca's backline has had to retreat. And you can also see the positioning of the Real Madrid players, mostly behind the ball, giving safe passing options. And Barca are going to use that to their advantage, so rather than sit in a compact shape and defend the box, they're going to try and reset their man-to-man press from here and push Real Madrid back. So firstly, the Barca midfielders identify their markers. It'll be Xavi on Valde, De Jong on Modric. Roberto can push all the way up to Camavinga, knowing that one of the centre-backs should take care of Benzema, and Raphinha can push up to Kroos. So Barca step up, they stay nice and compact, and eventually Modric has to go backwards to Camavinga. And I'm going to stop it here, just after the pass has been made, because this is where the magic happens. That backwards pass from Modric to Camavinga is the trigger for Barca to re-establish their press. Immediately, you see Jules Koundé in defence gesticulate for the backline to step up. And just moments later, Sergio Roberto gestures for Raphinha that he's passing Modric onto him. Barca have remained compact and narrow, discouraging any pass between the lines, so Madrid are forced back yet again, and another backwards pass is another trigger. This time you'll see Koundé and co make up a lot of ground as Madrid play it between their centre-backs. And you end up here with every Barca player having identified their man, the back line is nice and high so the team is compact, and every single pass can be met by an aggressive press. So for example, the ball goes out wide to Carvajal and Balde can sprint to close him down. Now I'm going to give you 3 seconds to identify the problem with Real Madrid's shape here. Okay, that's enough time because it's these guys. They're just not interested in participating, and that makes it so easy for Barca to press the remaining 7 outfield players. So Madrid are forced to go backwards, Barca's defensive line continues to step up, and Madrid end up all the way back at their goalkeeper. So we've gone from here to here in just a string of passes. Over the last few Clásicos, Barca have really perfected this pressing structure. In fact, they've been working on it all season, so I'm glad I finally got round to analysing it. For Real Madrid, you end up with no sustained pressure, very infrequent threat, and a complete reliance on individual brilliance. And to be fair to Vinicius, he does give a good account of himself in these games, but unless he gets the end product absolutely perfect, Madrid's attacks just aren't going anywhere. People talk a lot about the 1v1 duels between Vini and Araujo, and that will continue to be important for many years, but I think the most important aspect of that battle is actually in transition, because Madrid lose the ability to just hit the space in behind Barca's high line. That was actually a defining detail in the Clasico that Madrid won this season, but that option is cut off by Araujo, who is just too quick and can cover that space. So he just has to slow Vinicius down until Barca can make those recovery runs, knowing that Vini's going to get very little help, and then proceed to force Madrid back like we've just seen. I do of course have to give a shout out to Barca's midfielders, who cover an insane amount of ground and keep that intensity incredibly high. Here you can see all the defensive actions from Busquets and De Jong, who were doing a great job of breaking up play. And Xavi is just an absolute machine. In this clip, he's pressing 2 positions at once, and that intensity is what makes this strategy effective. I can't pretend though that Madrid are completely toothless, and a big shift came with the introduction of Rodrygo, who lined up alongside Vinicius in the left half space. That was a game-changing substitution from Ancelotti, because at the very least you had some support for Vinicius in that left half space, and the combination between those two Brazilians produced Madrid's best chances of the second half, including the disallowed goal, which gives a glimpse of how threatening Real Madrid could be if they were more proactive offensively, because otherwise balance has felt really off for a while, and just relying on Benzema Vinicius 1-2s isn't sustainable. Barca on the other hand have become a very solid defensive unit, and the sustained intensity from the likes of Balde and Xavi is priceless. So between that and Real Madrid's passivity, I think it's fair to call it, you get a string of games in which they've created very little against this Barca defence. Alright, let's move on to the other side of possession, where Barca as a whole are a far better attacking unit, and you'll see they've got a few new tricks up their sleeve as well. What Barcelona do really well these days, and that Real Madrid struggle to cope with, is manipulate the opposition's shape. I'll start on Barca's left, where typically Ancelotti likes to drop Valverde into a back 5 so that Barca's winger can be more tightly marked. But in this game, Barca's winger was Alejandro Balde, with Frenkie de Jong dropping back into a controller role like we've talked about many times before. The rest of the midfield are man-marked, but you can see there's no pressure on de Jong. And right at the start of the game, that created a problem for Real Madrid, because it was just too easy for de Jong to drive forward and create danger. So Ancelotti switched it up and had Valverde actually step up and press de Jong, attempting to put more pressure on the ball, which did lower Frenkie's influence, but it also isolated Carvajal, the right back, against Balde, who was now operating in much more space. Barca recognised that immediately, and Balde was a regular outlet to try and do damage from that flank. This was though probably still preferable for Madrid because, as we've talked about in our last couple of videos, Balde's output is not that consistent. He was a little too eager to put crosses in to very little avail, and this is where an elite creator next to him on that side would really transform this team, someone to show for the ball and take creative responsibility. Though to be fair to Xavi, we actually did get a couple of flashes of real creative intent, including this excellent passage, and also the ball over the top into Lewandowski that led to the first goal. So if he could develop his passing range, which it feels like he's trying to do, he'll really go to the next level. Regardless, in the main, it was actually Barca's right side that was more threatening, and that was heavily down to Raphinha, a player who during Dembele's long injury has become more and more influential for this Barca team. And you can see he's starting to play with a real freedom. That's afforded to him by the coach as well, because in this game against Real Madrid, his positioning was much narrower than we're used to seeing. From here, like we talked about in our Raphinha video, he can really influence the game. He's technically so good that he can receive the ball even when narrow to the fullback. Araujo's underlapping run makes that possible here, and he's immediately closer to the box where he can cause damage. And Barca had other creative ways to free up Raphinha as well, like Lewandowski's run drawing the fullback away. It also helps that he was up against either Nacho, who he definitely had the beating of, or when he drifted inside, he'd be up against Toni Kroos, who also isn't much of a stopgap. And that's a problem for Real Madrid, and really since Casemiro's departure, they have lacked a prolific ball winner in the middle of the pitch. Kroos is a great player, an elite player, but he is exploitable defensively, as we've seen in other Clásicos. Frankly though, it's not just a personnel problem that Madrid suffer from, but a mentality one. We've seen already the intensity that Barcelona operate with, and Real Madrid just couldn't be further from that. Not only do you have Benzema and Vinicius idle pretty often, the entire mentality is much more conservative. So where Barca were stepping up their defensive line and pressuring the ball whenever they could, Real Madrid's first reaction is to drop off. Here Camavinga could press de Jong, but instead drops off, and that allows de Jong to pick it up and Barca to play through the lines really easily. And for me, this is the bottom line of this video and the major difference between these two teams right now. Barca are extremely intense, they defend and attack as a unit, whereas Real Madrid are disjointed and certainly a lot more passive off the ball. They simply do not match Barca's intensity in these games. If I'm Carlo Ancelotti or the next Real Madrid manager, the job has got to be about changing that. Defensively, that means becoming a lot more proactive, and in possession, they need to find better balance. I think it's time to bet on some more adventurous players between the lines, the likes of Rodrygo, even if it's at the cost of some control. And of course, they could develop those players in-house themselves using one of the more modern coaching techniques like Be Your Best, which is football training in VR, and it's available not just to professional clubs, but to amateur players as well, to help improve your cognitive performance. The main skill that Be Your Best trains is your scanning, but you can also train vision, decision making, and memory. To do so, you'll play through over 800 scenarios recreated from real top-level games, like this one featuring Modric. You'll be playing from a player's perspective as you complete scenarios and receive feedback on your performance. Now, Be Your Best is used by both amateur and professional players all over the world, with Arsenal star Martin Odegaard even using it during his injury period. And the results are backed by science. A recent 9-week study saw players improve their scan rate by 28% thanks to the training. So you can get 20% off your first month or off your first year by using code PURIST20 at checkout. Just go to beyourbest.com to get started. The link will also be in the description, and you'll not only be improving your game, but supporting the channel as well, so everybody wins. So that's it for today. I hope you enjoyed. Make sure to leave a like if you did, subscribe for more tactical analysis, and I'll see you very soon. Until then, take care.